Auto discovery is controlled from within the device inventory page under Administration. That's accessible from the main menu, Administration, Device Inventory. Clicking the Auto Discovery button brings up a dialog that allows me to enter one or more IP address ranges. So I'm going to enter a range, beginning of the range, and a small range here. I could have entered an IP subnet or an individual device name or a list of device names, but I'm going to stay with the IP range. Now this is a test lab, so I'm just using the public community string for read-only. In a production environment, you'd be using a non-public string, and if you've got more than one string being used, you can enter multiple strings here by adding them in. It will always try and use the one at the top of the list first. If that fails, it'll go down the list until it finds one that works. By default, we've got a number of system object IDs excluded. These represent a range of servers with SNMP agents. If you want to manage the servers and find them during an IP address range scan, simply select them one by one and remove them from the list. You can also, if you want to, put exclusion ranges into the list by adding those ranges in up here. I'm going to leave everything else default for the time being and start the discovery. The discovery is now finished, and depending upon the size of the address range or ranges that you're scanning, it will take either longer or shorter amounts of time. You'll notice, if you look carefully here, that the View Results button has now become available. Now that's because I had left the Review Results before adding option Checked, which was the default. If that is unchecked, it would immediately take every device that's been found and then try to take them under management. I'm going to intervene at this point and view the results. These are the devices that have been found. So these, because it's not looking for servers, these are going to be the infrastructural devices, the routers, switches, firewalls, and things like that. I'm going to show how one of them can be eliminated from the list. Simply uncheck it. So I'm taking Pluto out of the list. And then you've got options here as to how you want them managed. Normally, you would work with full management, which is the default, but you do have options here to reduce the level of management. Basic only discovers the device itself with some rudimentary monitoring, no ports, and then ping only doesn't use SNMP at all. It just allows the IP address to be pinged using an ICMP loopback operation. Let's leave them all full for the time being. At that point, I'm going to add them to the inventory, which will begin the process of actually taking those devices under management. Let's close that off, and you'll see the list of the devices that we've just added to the inventory, and at the moment it's working through them one by one to work out whether they can be managed and what type of devices they are. The screen from time to time will auto refresh. However, if you're impatient, you can simply hit your F5 refresh key. Let's wait for the list to complete. Now all of the devices are listed as having been added, with the exception of this first one. If I were to place my cursor over that red cross, you'll notice that it says that it is unable to resolve the device IP to a host name. Now the default mode of discovery was to find a resolvable host name for whichever IP address is being used to monitor the device by. This device doesn't have a host name in our resolution system, so I've got a choice at this point of either selecting it and deleting it, or modifying it and choosing a different way to name it. One approach would simply be to leave the IP address as is and say that I really want to name it by the IP address. Another approach would be to add a completely custom name and just enter a name. And the other one would be to use its SNMP system name, which is actually pulled from the device using SNMP. I'm simply going to say, let's just treat that as an IP address, and you'll see it's now re-adding it, and that should be able to be taken under management. After a few minutes, the reachable icon should change to a green check under normal circumstances, indicating that the devices are responding to both ping and SNMP requests.